Welcome everyone to this deep and eye-opening journey where a separate scientific truth from popular myths that millions of people still believe today. Throughout history, humans have already and always tried to explain the world around them. Some explanations were based on evidences and experimentation, while others were built from the assumptions, fear, tradition, media, influence, or misunderstood observations. Over time, many of these misconceptions became accepted as facts, even when science repeatedly proved otherwise. So, in this video, I'm not just discussing about the science. I am going to share about how myths shape society, education, health, psychology, and even decision making. Some myths are harmless entertainment, while others have caused serious confusion, fear, and misinformation worldwide. The purpose of this video is not to insult anyone for believing these ideas. Instead, it is to encourage curiosity, critical thinking, humility, and open minded learning. So, today we will debunk 10 of the most famous science myths, explore the controversies behind them, understand why people believed them for so long, and uncover what real scientific evidence actually says. By the end of this video, you may never look at science, media, or even everyday assumptions the same way again. Why science myths survive? Science myths survive because the human brain naturally prefers simple explanations over complicated truths. People often believe information that is repeated emotionally, dramatically, or confidently, even when there is little evidence behind it. Myths become powerful when they are connected to fear, motivation, identity, or the culture. For example, if a myth sounds inspiring, like you only use 10% of your brain, people may accept it because it creates hope and imagination. If a myth sounds protective, like cracking knuckles causes arthritis, parents may repeat it to children for generations. Over time, repetition creates familiarity, and familiarity creates the belief. Social media has accelerated this process dramatically. Today, misinformation spreads faster than scientific correction. Short emotional claims often travel farther than detailed evidence because emotional content triggers stronger reactions. Science, however, depends on testing, evidence, observation, peer review, and continuous correction. Unlike myths, science changes when new evidence appears. And one important lesson we must remember is this: science is not weak because it changes. Science is strong because it is willing to correct itself. Science myths are not just harmless stories. Many myths influence how people make decisions about health, education, parenting, relationships, technology, and even politics. False beliefs can create fear, confusion, discrimination, and dangerous behaviors. For example, misinformation about vaccines has caused real world public health crisis. Myths about intelligence or brain usage affect education and self confidence. Misunderstanding evolution affects scientific literacy globally. Even small myths about food, sleep, memory, or biology can slowly shape how millions of people think. Another major problem is that myths weaken critical thinking. When people stop questioning information, they become easier to manipulate. Scientific literacy is not only about memorizing the facts, it is about learning how to evaluate evidence, recognize bias, ask better questions, and remain intellectually humble. The goal of this video is not simply to say this myth is wrong. The deeper goal is to understand why humans believe myths is the first place and how we can become better thinkers in an age filled with misinformation. One of the most famous science myths in history is the idea that humans only use 10% of their brains. This claim appears in movies, motivational speeches, self help seminars, and internet discussions. Many people believe there is a hidden 90% of mental power waiting to be unlocked. But modern neuroscience completely proves this idea. Brain scans using technologies like MRI and PET imaging shows that almost every region of the brain has a function. Even during sleep, multiple areas remain highly active. Different regions control language, movement, memory, emotions, decision making, creativity, vision, balance, and survival functions. From an evolutionary perspective, it would make no sense for the body to maintain an organ that consumes enormous energy while leaving 90% unused. The human brain uses about 20% of the body's total energy despite being only a small percentage of body weight. Evolution does not preserve useless structures at such high energy costs. The truth is not that we use only 10% of the brain. The truth is that we are still discovering how incredibly complex the brain truly is. This myth became popular partly because of misunderstood psychology research and exaggerated motivational messages. Early researchers discovered that not all neurons fire simultaneously, and this observation was simplified into the false belief that most of the brain remains unused. Hollywood also amplified the myth. Movies suggested that unlocking hidden brain potential could create superhuman intelligence or the powers. While entertaining, these stories blurred the line between fiction and neuroscience. Motivational speakers often used the myth symbolically to encourage self improvement. While the intention may have been positive, repeating inaccurate science slowly transformed fiction into common knowledge. The important lesson here is this: inspiration should never depend on misinformation. Human potential is already extraordinary without inventing false science. Many parents believe sugar causes children to become uncontrollably energetic and hyperactive. Birthday parties, candy, soft drinks, and desserts are often blamed for chaotic behavior in the children. However, scientific studies repeatedly failed to prove a strong direct connection between sugar consumption and hyperactivity in most children. Researchers discovered something fascinating: expectation bias. When parents believed children consumed sugar, they often perceived behavior as more hyperactive, even when the child actually received sugar free food. So why do children appear energetic at parties? Because parties themselves are exciting environments filled with stimulation, games, social interaction, noise, and emotional excitement. This doesn't mean excessive sugar is healthy. High sugar intake can contribute to obesity, diabetes, and dental problems, but the specific belief that sugar directly creates hyperactivity is far more complicated than popular culture suggests. This myth reveals something powerful about human psychology. Sometimes our expectations shape what we believe we observe. Parents naturally want explanations for behavior, and sugar became an easy target. The placebo effect and expectation bias are extremely powerful forces in medicine and psychology. Humans often interpret events according to what they already believe. This also teaches us an important lesson about parenting and the leadership. Sometimes behavior is influenced more by environment, emotion, social stimulation, and attention than by a single food ingredient. The bigger scientific lesson is this: correlation does not always mean causation. Many people grew up hearing warnings that cracking knuckles would eventually destroy their joints and cause arthritis. Parents, teachers, and elders repeated this claim for generations, but scientific research does not support this belief. The cracking sound comes from gas bubbles rapidly collapsing inside joint fluid, not from the bones grinding against each other. Long-term studies comparing habitual knuckle crackers with non-crackers found no strong evidence linking the habit to arthritis. One famous researcher even cracked the knuckles on only one hand for decades as an experiment. The result: no meaningful difference in arthritis between his hands. However, excessive knuckle cracking may sometimes cause temporary discomfort or reduced grip strength in certain individuals, but arthritis itself is influenced more by genetics, aging, inflammation, injuries, and other medical conditions. This myth survived largely because authority figures repeated it confidently. Parents often used it to discourage habits they found annoying or impolite. Many myths survive because they contain emotional authority rather than scientific evidences. When something is repeated by trusted people for decades, questioning it can feel uncomfortable. Science teaches us something important here. Tradition alone is not the proof. At the same time, science also teaches humility. Just because a myth is false does not mean elders had bad intentions. Often myths survive because people genuinely believe they are helping or protecting others. This is one of the most dangerous science myths in the modern history. The myth began after a 1998 study by Andrew Wakefield falsely linked to vaccines to autism. Later investigations revealed serious ethical violations and manipulated data. The study was retracted and Wakefield lost his medical license. Since then, enormous global research involving millions of children found no credible evidence connecting vaccines to autism. Vaccines have saved millions of lives by preventing deadly diseases such as polio, measles, and smallpox. Yet, fear spread faster than evidence because the topic involved children, emotions, uncertainty, and the trust. This myth demonstrates how misinformation can create real world consequences when fear overpowers scientific evidences. One reason this myth spread rapidly was because emotional stories influence humans more strongly than statistics. Parents naturally fear anything that could harm the children. Social media amplified emotional anecdotes, while scientific corrections received less attention. Once fear becomes connected to identity or parenting, changing beliefs becomes extremely difficult. This topic also reveals an important truth. Trust in science depends on the communication. Scientists must explain evidence clearly, honestly, and compassionately. Science alone is not enough. Communication matters too. The idea that goldfish forget everything after 3 seconds became extremely popular in pop culture and comedy. But research shows fish are much smarter than many people assumed. Goldfish can learn routines, recognize patterns, remember feeding schedules, navigate mazes, and responding to training for the months. Some studies even showed fish recognizing human faces and environmental changes. This myth reflects a larger human tendency underestimating intelligence in animals simply because they are different from us. Modern science increasingly reveals that intelligence exists across many species in surprising forms. Crows solve puzzles, dolphins communicate socially, octopuses demonstrate problem solving abilities, bees communicate locations using movement patterns. The more scientists study animals, the more they realize intelligence is not a simple hierarchy with humans. at the top of every category. This myth teaches humility. Nature is often more complex and intelligent than human assumptions allow. One of the most misunderstood statements about evolution is the claim that humans came directly from modern monkeys. Science does not say this. Humans and modern monkeys share a common ancestor that lived millions of years ago. Over time, different evolutionary branches developed separately, leading to modern humans, chimpanzees, gorillas, and other primates. Evolution is not a ladder moving towards perfection. It is a branching tree shaped by environmental adaptation, genetics, and survival pressures. Evolution often becomes controversial because it intersects with identity, culture, philosophy, and religion. It is important to approach these discussions respectfully. Science explains biological mechanisms through evidences. It does not automatically answer every philosophical or spiritual question humans ask. Misunderstandings arise when evolution is oversimplified into misleading phrases. Scientific literacy requires nuisance, patience, and open discussion. Many people heard that Great Wall of China is the only human-made structure visible from the space. In reality, astronauts report that the wall is extremely difficult to see with the naked eye from low Earth orbit under normal conditions. The wall blends naturally with surrounding landscapes and is relatively narrow compared to large cities, roads, airports, and illuminated urban areas. This myth became popular partly because it sounds dramatic and symbolic. Astronauts describe Earth from space as both beautiful and humbling. Surprisingly, city lights and environmental changes are often easier to notice than famous monuments. This myth reminds us that human imagination sometimes values symbolic narratives more than scientific accuracy. The Great Wall remains an extraordinary historical achievement regardless of visibility from the space. Lightning never strikes the same place twice. This saying became popular because lightning appears random and unpredictable, but Scientifically, the lightning often strikes the same locations repeatedly, especially tall structures like skyscrapers, towers, and mountains. The Empire State Building can be struck dozens of times per year. Lightning follows electrical pathways, and taller conductive objects increase the probability of repeated strikes. Humans naturally fear unpredictable natural forces. Myths often emerge when people try to simplify dangerous events. Weather science helps us understand the patterns that once appeared mysterious. Understanding science does not remove nature's power, it helps us respect it more intelligently. Bullfighting popularized the idea that bulls became angry specifically because of red clothes. In reality, bulls are colorblind to red-green distinctions. They react mainly to movement and perceived threat, not the color itself. The dramatic red cape survives because it creates theatrical symbolism for human audiences. Many myths survive because culture reinforces them visually and emotionally. Humans often remember dramatic stories more easily than technical explanations. Tradition can become stronger than evidence when repeated through entertainment and rituals. Science asks us to question appearances carefully. This myth sounds disturbing, but biology explains it simply. After death, the body dehydrates and the skin retracts. As the skin pulls back, hair and nails appear longer, even though growth has stopped completely. Cell growth requires metabolism, oxygen, and biological activity, which ends after the death. Topics involving death often generate myths because humans naturally fear mortality and uncertainty. Science helps reduce fear by explaining biological processes honestly and respectfully. Knowledge does not remove mystery from the life, often, it deepens appreciation for it. Why humans believe false information. Humans are emotional creatures before they are logical ones. Fear, repetition, authority, identity, and social belonging strongly influence belief systems. Social media algorithms often reward emotional engagement rather than truths. Misinformation spreads rapidly because shocking content captures attention faster than careful scientific explanation. Critical thinking is one of the most important survival skills of the modern world. Science is not about knowing everything perfectly. Science is a process of continuous learning, questioning, testing, and improving the understanding. Being wrong is not the weakness. Refusing to learn is the weakness. Curiosity drives discovery. Humility allows the growth. Evidence protects society from manipulation and the fear. The goal of science is not to destroy wonder. The goal is to replace illusion with deeper understanding. Thank you for joining this journey through some of the world's most famous science myths. If this video has changed your perspective even slightly, remember to stay curious, ask better questions, and continue exploring knowledge with an open mind. Comment below which myth surprised you the most, which myth did you believe before today? And what science topics should we explore the next? If you enjoyed this video, like, share, subscribe, and support scientific thinking and curiosity. Because in a world full of misinformation, critical thinking becomes a superpower.